Hey guys, tonight we slip into the dust-choked streets of ancient Rome and make our way, one sandal drag at a time, toward the Colosseum. You can already hear the muffled roar of the crowd. The sun beats down, your tunic sticking in places it shouldn't, and the smell of street food and open sewer is a little too enthusiastic. You push past merchants yelling about salted olives, dodge a goat wearing a wreath for reasons no one explains, and keep your grip tight on your wooden seating token. You're about to become one of 50,000 spectators packed shoulder to shoulder in a stadium where death is a sport and lunch happens on top of bloodstains. Good luck. You probably won't survive this. At least not emotionally, so, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're tuning in from, and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You don't even see the Colosseum at first. That's the weird part. The thing is huge, over 150 feet tall, but Rome is so cramped and cluttered with marble arches, statues, and gossipy fountains that it takes turning a certain corner to suddenly feel dwarfed by it. There it is. Enormous, looming, and already buzzing with anticipation. You join the crowd moving like syrup toward one of the 80 entrances, each numbered, like the world's most chaotic stadium parking lot. You clutch your tessera, a little clay seating token marked with your gate, level, and section. No QR codes here. If you lose it, good luck sweet-talking a Roman usher. They're armed, and they haven't had their breakfast yet. Around you, the social spectrum of Rome is on parade. Rich patricians in pristine white togas glide past like they're made of marble. Foreign diplomats sport colorful robes and look both fascinated and mildly horrified. Merchants wave sausages on sticks. And then there's you, somewhere in the middle. Not rich enough for the shaded seats, but not poor enough to be standing on the very top tier, baking in the sun next to a guy who hasn't bathed since Caligula's reign. The Colosseum's exterior is a honeycomb of arches and columns, 4 stories tall, covered in once bright statues that now look suspiciously headless. The stones are pale travertine, slightly yellowed from time and, probably, decades of spilled wine. A side note you overhear, those outer walls. They're held together with iron clamps. At least, they were, until medieval builders started stealing them. If the whole thing looks a bit like a Swiss cheese now, blame the 13th century. You finally pass under the vaulted archway into the vomitorium, not as gross as it sounds. It just means a tunnel that vomits people into the stands. Which it does, efficiently. You're suddenly inside, and the noise hits you like a wave. You expected shouting, maybe drums. You didn't expect the constant low-level buzz of 50,000 Romans all trying to out-talk each other at once. The seating tiers rise around you like a stone wedding cake. Rich folks at the bottom, sweating peasants at the top. The emperor. He's got his own box, obviously. Probably fanned by slaves and being fed grapes. You, meanwhile, are about to climb more stairs than you thought Rome even had. You pass a vendor shouting, Lopedum calidum. Hot wolf meat. No, he's probably joking. Hopefully. Either way, you're not hungry anymore. You pause at a massive bronze plaque listing the name of the emperor who funded this particular day's games. There's always a name. Always a political message. These aren't just shows, they're voter outreach, Roman style. Free entertainment and a subtle reminder that if the emperor can kill a dozen lions before lunch, he can definitely collect your taxes. Now the smell. Let's talk about the smell. It's not all bad. There's incense, burning myrrh and pine resin. There's roasted meat, citrus peels people throw around like ancient Febreze. But then there's also the blood. You can already smell it. It's dry and metallic and mingles with the damp stone and heat in a way that sticks to your nose hairs. Somewhere, a trumpet blares, and everyone cheers even though nothing's happening yet. You squint and spot 2 gladiators doing warm-ups in a distant corridor, stretching like they're about to run a 5K, not murder each other. Historians still argue whether every single Roman truly loved the games or if some were just pretending because their boss invited them. Either way, when you're here, the energy is infectious. You kind of want to cheer, too. Even if you're not sure for what, an old man beside you says something about the Great Flood. You raise an eyebrow. Oh yes, he's talking about the Naumachia, those mythic staged sea battles supposedly held right in the Colosseum when it was newly built. Historians debate this endlessly. Could they really have flooded the arena with water deep enough to float ships? Or is that just one of those Roman engineering miracle myths that sounded better in a tavern? You finally reach your tier. The stone seat is slightly damp, very uncomfortable, and shaped to make you sit up perfectly straight. Roman spine health? Or Roman torture? To your left, someone's already sketching the view in charcoal. To your right, a child is trying to sell you pickled dates. Below, the arena waits, a flat oval covered in sand, deceptively calm, like a pool before the cannonball. You spot trapdoors. Lots of them. Square hatches set flush with the arena floor. You'll see what they're for soon enough. Spoiler alert, it's not safe surprises. As you shift to get comfortable, or as comfortable as one can be on ancient concrete, you realize something unsettling. This entire event, from the hawkers outside to the seating arrangements and even the animals caged beneath your feet, is running on an engine of ruthless efficiency. Rome didn't just build this place. It perfected it. The Colosseum isn't just an arena, it's an industry, and you're now part of the machine. You sit stone-backed and sun-dappled, wedged between two strangers with very different ideas of personal space. One's already asleep, snoring, mouth open, completely unfazed by the distant howls of lions below. The other is chewing olives loudly and giving unsolicited commentary on Gladiator gear. You've barely gotten settled when the wave of latecomers starts flooding in. A woman in a feathered hat elbows her way down your row, muttering something about how noble blood shouldn't have to sit this far from the action. You glance at your tessera again. Tiny, unremarkable, and absolutely essential. This little clay chip is your only proof that you belong in this specific wedge of tiered humanity. Lose it, and you'll be booted out faster than a bad actor from a Plautus comedy. The ushers, burly, chain-wearing officials with sour expressions, keep a watchful eye on anyone loitering without a clear seat. There are even stories of people trying to forge tesserae, which sounds absurd until you realize just how competitive Colosseum seating really is. The best spots offer more than just a better view, they offer shade. And in Rome, that's worth more than gold or decent plumbing. Of course, the elite have their own exclusive sections, complete with cushioned chairs, private food trays, and a slightly better chance of not being peed on by pigeons. The emperor sits front and center. His viewing box flanked by guards and festooned with colored banners. From here, he can see everything, the battles, the beasts, the crowd, and most importantly, how the people react to him. The Colosseum may be an arena for games, but it's also a massive PR campaign. You scan the massive crowd, and it hits you, this isn't just a casual Saturday hangout. This is half the city crammed into a stone amphitheater, organized with the precision of a modern sports stadium, except instead of nachos and baseball caps, people have garum-drenched cheese and tunics stitched by their aunt's cousin's mistress. The seating is divided by strict social rules. The senatorial class gets front row seats. Knights, equites, get the next tier. After that, it's Roman citizens, then non-citizens, freedmen, and finally, way up at the top, the enslaved and the women. Yes, even elite women, regardless of wealth, had to sit separately and higher up. Historians still argue whether this was about modesty, safety, or just another delightful example of Rome being deeply patriarchal. Up in those upper tiers, you can just make out clusters of brightly dressed women shielding themselves from the sun with elaborate parasols. You imagine the view must be terrible, but the gossip? Probably excellent. a passing vendor almost drops a steaming basket of what smells like honeyed dormice on your lap. You politely decline. He shrugs, mutters something about city people being soft, and moves on to the next row. You hope that's sarcasm and not an insult. It's getting hard to tell. The atmosphere builds slowly, like a kettle just starting to whistle. Chatter rises. Children scamper across laps. Someone starts playing a flute, badly. Flags flutter overhead, catching bursts of sunlight. You can see seagulls circling far above the open arena, unaware that very soon, the place will be less picnic and more panic. A group of gulls in colorful cloaks sits a few rows down, looking around with a mix of wonder and suspicion. Rome's vast empire brings in all kinds, traders, diplomats, ambassadors, even enemy kings under friendly captivity. You wonder what it must feel like to be paraded in front of the empire's mightiest monument, just to watch your people fight bears while the crowd cheers. Suddenly, a commotion to your right. Someone's been caught in the wrong seat. The usher holds up the offending tessera like it's a forged check, and after some shouting and waving of hands, the intruder is dragged off. The crowd barely notices. This happens all the time. Fun fringe fact: some historians believe certain elite citizens actually sold or rented out their premium seats for a tidy profit. Because why enjoy the show when you can make money off someone else getting trampled by a rhino? As the sun creeps higher, the shade lines shift, and a hot breeze sweeps through the arches. People start fanning themselves with scraps of papyrus. A man behind you pours perfumed water on a cloth and places it on his head like a makeshift air conditioner. It smells vaguely of crushed roses and desperation. The crowd starts to chant something, a rhythmic, rising sound that seems more about participation than any actual words. You can't tell what they're saying, but it's catching. People love being part of something loud, especially when it doesn't require clear pronunciation. Then comes a short blast from a curved horn, a cornu, and the crowd hushes a little. Not silence, but anticipation. Everyone starts looking toward the imperial box. The emperor hasn't arrived yet, but his entrance is always theatrical. Trumpets. Drapes pulled aside. Maybe even a live animal parade. Who knows? One year they had a giraffe walk across the arena floor just because they could. The man to your left taps your arm and offers a piece of dried figure. You accept. It's chewy, sticky, and tastes like something dropped in sand. You thank him anyway. He smiles, revealing 2 teeth and a world of optimism. As you lean back, adjusting on the slightly crumbly stone, you start to notice how intricate the Colosseum really is. Carved numbers over each arch, subtle color coding. Ramps, stairwells, water fountains. It's not just impressive, it's terrifyingly efficient. Rome didn't just build a stadium. It built a behavioral machine. Everyone's movements, from entrance to exit, were designed, timed, and enforced with military precision. There's a theory, not widely accepted, but deliciously weird, that the layout of the Colosseum was partially inspired by astrology. That somehow, the placement of arches and gates corresponded to celestial signs. Historians mostly roll their eyes, but hey, it is Rome. Astrology was basically the Wi-Fi of the ancient world, unreliable but always available. Now the noise is almost deafening. People clap. Someone throws a handful of flower petals into the air for no apparent reason. A goat, possibly the same one from earlier, sprints across the top tier. You don't question it, and still, the show hasn't started. This is Rome, after all. Even blood has a schedule. You're still trying to stretch your legs without kicking the person in front of you when another trumpet blast cuts through the chaos, longer this time, and more dramatic. It echoes off the stone, bounces between tiers, and finally settles over the crowd like an official announcement. We're really doing this. You shift, rising slightly to get a better look, and instantly regret it. A cloud of dust puffs up from the stone bench, and now it feels like you've snorted a teaspoon of Pompeii. Welcome to ancient stadium seating, no cushions, no personal space, and definitely no refund policy. Your part of the stands is now packed solid. Somewhere behind you, a child is whining about needing to pee. Somewhere in front, a couple is arguing in low Latin about whether they should have brought a parasol. A vendor walks by yelling, "Fresh goat cheese. Only slightly warm." The atmosphere is a strange cocktail of party, panic, and pre-battle butterflies. You're not sure whether you're excited or just nervous, but it doesn't matter, because you're locked in now. The usher has stopped patrolling. The archways have quieted. Everyone's facing the arena. Something is definitely about to happen, and yet. The arena floor is still empty. For now. You glance down at it again. Smooth, sand-covered, perfectly oval. The sand is there for a reason, it soaks up blood. That's the kind of detail you hear once and can never unhear. It's been raked into near perfection, waiting like a freshly set stage, then finally, movement. From a side gate, a parade of performers begins to spill into the arena. Not warriors. Not slaves. But entertainers. First come the musicians, tooting on panpipes, horns, and some instrument that sounds suspiciously like a dying cow. They're wearing exaggerated costumes, think colorful cloaks, jingling bells, and shoes that would trip an average goat. Behind them are mimes. Actual mimes. One pretends to be eaten by a bear. Another pretends to be the bear. The crowd loves it. A goose waddles by wearing a painted wooden helmet. You blink. Yes, that happened. This is Rome. You're not getting battle right away, you're getting a warm-up act. And Romans loved a good warm-up. The performers move around the arena like they own it, hamming it up with exaggerated gestures and comedic tumbles. A few even interact with the front-row audience, poking fun at senators, mimicking their robes, getting fake scolded. You think you hear someone call out, "Do Caesar next." But the mime wisely declines. Historians still argue whether these opening acts were consistent across all games or reserved for special occasions. Some say every morning show had its own flair, others argue that most of this theatrical fluff only happened during the big festivals. The ones funded directly by emperors or celebrating major victories. Either way, it's clear this isn't just about killing things, it's about spectacle. A dancer twirls past holding a giant feather fan. Another one juggles amphorae. One trips and, well, okay, that one might have been unintentional. You look around and realize the crowd isn't just watching, they're rating. Laughing, booing, tossing coins if they're impressed. There's no fourth wall here. It's a Roman variety hour, and the audience is judge, jury, and critic. Then come the animal tricks. No blood yet, just confusion. A handler brings out a lion on a chain. The crowd goes quiet. You brace yourself, but no, the lion just sits. The handler throws it a hunk of meat, it catches it mid-air, and someone cheers like it's the chariot races. Next, a pair of monkeys ride tiny carts. You're not sure whether to be impressed or horrified. The goose returns, now pulling a toy wagon with a fake baby inside it. Somewhere, a philosopher is writing a scroll about the moral collapse of society, and you don't blame him. Fringe fact time: there are actual Roman graffiti references to animal performances at the Colosseum, including sketches of ostriches doing races and a bear that could balance on a barrel. Whether that's real or just the ancient version of fan fiction, historians debate that too. But in this moment, with the crowd roaring in laughter and a pig wearing a laurel crown doing circles around a mime, it doesn't feel far-fetched. Suddenly, a flare of trumpet notes. Not the clumsy kind from earlier, but sharp, synchronized ones, something official. The entertainers freeze. The music stops. The animal handlers start herding their stars back toward the gates with the nervous energy of people who really don't want to be in the arena when the main event begins. And just like that, the mood shifts, laughter dies down. Conversations trail off. You feel a silence settle, heavier than any trumpet. The arena is cleared, the sand is raked again, because presentation matters. Always has. A few workers, mostly young men, probably slaves, drag long wooden rakes across the surface, leveling out the chaos. Their tunics are soaked in sweat. You watch one of them glance up toward the imperial box, just for a second. No reaction. No acknowledgement. Just keep raking. Then a group of men come out with incense burners, waving trails of smoke into the air. It smells like myrrh and pine, mixing with dust and the distant tang of animal dung. Welcome to Rome's idea of Febreze. You shift in your seat again. The stone has not gotten any softer. Someone nearby is now gently weeping, probably from the sun, or the scent, or both. But there's no escaping now. You're in. You're part of this, and then comes the imperial fanfare. Banners unfurl. Horns blare. A sudden flood of color and movement overtakes the main gate. You see movement in the emperor's box, purple robes, golden laurel, a wave so practiced it might as well be muscle memory. The emperor appears, seated and flanked by guards. The crowd rises. Not everyone cheers. But everyone stands. That's not an option, you rise too, unsure where to look. The emperor waves again, acknowledging his people like a deity descending briefly to slum it with mortals. Next to him, advisors whisper. Behind him, attendants fan and fuss. One drops something. No one dares pick it up, the emperor's presence signals it's time. Really, truly time, the warm-up was over, the blood was coming. You don't sit back down right away. No one does. The emperor hasn't given the signal yet. It's like a very awkward game of freeze tag with 50,000 sweaty participants. The moment stretches. And then, finally, with an almost lazy wave of his hand, the emperor gives his nod, the crowd exhales. Bodies shift. People settle, awkwardly, like rocks trying to find a comfortable position. You sit. The stone is still unforgiving. Your knees are already plotting revenge. But now you're laser focused on the arena, because the real show is beginning, well. Almost, there's still one more round of pre-game fanfare. You can feel the tension building. The crowd rustles like a field of wheat before a storm. Then, music. Not the silly kind from before. This is structured, triumphant, imperial. Drums. Horns. A rhythm you can feel in your ribs. From one of the grand gates, a procession begins. The Pampa, the ceremonial parade, was a staple of Roman games, and now you see why. Dozens of people pour in, costumed like gods, heroes, and assorted mythical creatures. They're followed by animals, real ones this time. Exotic, ridiculous, probably terrified. First come the dancers, stepping in unison, cloaks swirling in the dust. They're meant to represent past champions, or maybe gods of battle. It's hard to tell. One trips slightly, recovers, and tries to pretend it was part of the routine. Then, chariots. But not for racing, these are purely decorative. Painted red and gold, pulled by horses with absurd feathered headdresses. Each one carries a figure costumed as a deity. Jupiter. Mars. Neptune. A man dressed as Bacchus is clearly drunk. The crowd adores him. You spot the beast cages being rolled forward, covered in heavy cloths. You hear snorts, growls, a high-pitched screech that makes the flute guy 3 rows up drop his instrument. The crowd's mood shifts again, less amusement, more fascination. There's something primal about watching something with claws try to chew through wooden bars. Then a murmur spreads through the stands. Out comes the priest. Yes, that kind of priest, the kind with a shiny knife and a look like he's about to sacrifice a goat. He's flanked by attendants carrying bowls of burning incense and small statues of Roman gods. A hush falls as he steps toward the altar in the arena's center, temporary, symbolic, and absolutely dramatic, he chants. You catch snippets, names of gods, cries for favor, assurances of honor and glory. It's all very official. He sprinkles wine. He burns incense. He gives the arena floor a dramatic nod. And somewhere in the shadows, you hear something large snort again. The opening blessing is complete. Cue the entertainers. Again, yes, another act, though this one's shorter. This time it's jugglers, dancers, and a man balancing a ceramic pot on his face. The crowd chuckles, but everyone's really waiting for the same thing, chaos, and then, finally, you hear it, a groan of wooden gates being hauled open, and out comes a team of acrobats, yes, again. No, you're not imagining it. The Romans were many things, but efficient at starting shows on time. Not one of them, but these aren't ordinary acrobats. They're animal handlers, and they're prepping the arena for the next act, animal displays. Not yet the bloody ones, those come later, but these are meant to be spectacular. A kind of look how weird our empire is sampler. You watch as ostriches are paraded past crocodiles. Camels stand blinking in the sunlight, decorated in beads and tassels. A zebra, yes, a zebra, does a sort of half-prance under the reluctant prodding of its handler. There's a debate among scholars whether these displays were educational, ceremonial, or just the Roman equivalent of look what we conquered. Probably a mix of all three. But here in the stands, the audience's reaction is universal, wonder. You lean forward, genuinely intrigued. This isn't the brutality you were expecting. It's strange, sure, but weirdly beautiful. You watch a peacock strut across the arena like it owns the place, feathers shimmering, completely unaware it might be lunch later. A handler coaxes a small bear onto a low platform. It balances, briefly, waves a paw, and then waddles off to general applause. A few children squeal with delight. The mood softens. You feel yourself relaxing, big mistake, because now, the music changes again, a single, sharp drumbeat, the parade of strange animals retreats, the gates open again, and out comes a tiger. This one isn't here for tricks, it snarls. Prowls. Paces the arena with sleek menace. It's alone, but not for long. From another gate, a man steps out. Light armor. Spear. Nervous energy leaking from every limb. This is not a gladiator. This is a venator, a beast hunter. He's here for a different kind of performance. The tiger eyes him like a puzzle. The crowd leans in, and then the show truly begins. The venator circles, waiting for the beast to move. He bangs his spear on his shield, shouting something, probably a prayer or a taunt. The tiger growls, crouches low, and pounces. The fight is fast, chaotic, and surprisingly graceful. The man dodges, jabs, rolls, jumps. The tiger swipes, spins, nearly clips him. Dust swirls. You can't help but grip the edge of your seat. This isn't a battle to the death, not always. Sometimes the animal is spared if the fight is good. Sometimes the hunter is given a break if he earns applause. But mercy here is about as reliable as Roman plumbing. The venator lands a blow, not fatal, but enough to make the tiger back off. The crowd cheers. The emperor watches, unreadable. The handlers step in. Nets are thrown. The tiger is restrained, panting but alive. The man bows, bleeding from a shallow gash. The crowd roars. And this was just the appetizer. You sit back, heart pounding. Someone behind you mutters, "Bring out the rhino next." You're not sure if that's a request or a threat. Quirky side note, some records suggest Rome once brought in a hippo that panicked, sat down, and refused to move. The crowd watched it for nearly an hour like it was high art. Apparently, Nothing beats the comedic potential of a stubborn aquatic cow. You reach for your water flask, take a cautious sip, and try not to think about how early it still is. The sun hasn't even reached its peak. And the real carnage, the kind with swords, shields, and decisions from the imperial thumb, is still waiting behind those gates, but for now, you catch your breath, and prepare for what's next. The air changes before the trumpets sound, it's subtle at first. The laughter dies down. People shift in their seats, not with impatience, but with something closer to instinct, like a dog sensing thunder. Even the vendors go quiet. No more hot wine. No more honey-drenched figs. No more muttering about camel logistics. Just anticipation, and then, blare. The brass screams across the Colosseum. 3 long blasts. Ritual. Familiar. Every Roman knows that sound means one thing: the games have officially begun. You glance at the emperor. He remains motionless, except for a slight tilt of the head. Maybe it's boredom. Maybe it's power. Hard to tell when you're 50 feet away and squinting through torch smoke. Down in the arena, the gates grind open again, this time slower, more theatrical. The sand's been freshly raked again. It looks peaceful. Clean. You know that won't last, and then the first cart rolls in. Yes, cart. Picture a large wooden platform on wheels, decorated in gaudy ribbons and trailing a pair of oxen. On the cart, statues of Roman gods, Mars, Jupiter, maybe Minerva if someone remembered, and surrounding them, men in full armor. Real armor. Real weapons. Real nerves. These are not performers anymore, these are gladiators, but not fighting yet. This is the Pompa Gladiatoria, a ceremonial procession where the fighters circle the arena before the actual combat begins. It's half parade, half soul-weighing ceremony. Each man steps off the cart and begins a slow march around the arena, past the emperor's box, past the crowd, past you. You see them up close now. The armor is dazzling, some of it absurdly impractical. Gold leaf, dyed feathers, elaborate helms shaped like sea monsters. It's like someone handed a 6-year-old a coloring book and a history of Greek warfare. They walk in formation, 2 by 2. Some keep their heads down. Some stare defiantly at the crowd. One even winks at someone in the front row. Confidence? Or denial? Hard to say. You can feel the ripple of energy through the stands. Cheers mix with jeers. Coins are tossed, not to support, but to bet. The crowd is already speculating. Who's strong? Who's new? Who's doomed? Gladiators aren't anonymous here. Many are local celebrities. You hear someone behind you whisper, "That's Marcus Felix. He took down 3 Retiarii in one match last Saturnalia." Someone else swears they recognize a man who was supposed to be dead. The crowd loves a comeback story, especially when it ends in blood. A gladiator stops in front of the emperor's box, raises his arm, and speaks loudly, clearly, "Ave, Imperator. Morituri te salutant." Hail, Emperor. Those who are about to die salute you. Not all historians agree this was said every time. It's actually only recorded in a few specific games, but in this moment, it happens. And the emperor nods. Maybe solemn. Maybe distracted. Hard to tell under the gold laurels. The fighters finish their circuit and split off toward the staging areas. Some to one side, some to the other. This is when the matchups are finalized. You won't know who fights who until they step into the arena, and then, a pause. It's deliberate. Calculated. You can feel the Colosseum holding its breath, and then, more trumpet blasts. The first match begins. 2 gates open simultaneously. On one side, a Murmillo, a heavily armored gladiator with a broad shield, crested helmet, and short sword. He lumbers in, each step slow and solid, like a walking statue. on the other, Gladiators, lightly armored, with a trident and a weighted net. His head is uncovered, his movements quick, his odds debatable. The crowd perks up. This is a favorite matchup. Heavy versus fast. Turtle versus mosquito. It's part sport, part dance, part disaster waiting to happen. They circle. The Murmillo raises his shield. The Gladiator twirls his net like he's done this 1,000 times. Which he probably has. The first charge is quick, too quick. The Murmillo lunges, but the Gladiator sidesteps and flips the net. It misses. The crowd groans, they reset, second charge. This time, the net connects, catches the Murmillo's arm, tangles just enough to make him stumble. The Gladiator strikes with his trident. Once. Twice. One of the blows hits the shield. The other schemes the helmet with a metallic clang. They break apart. The Murmillo yanks the net free and roars, not theatrical, but genuinely angry. He charges again, shield raised like a battering ram. The Gladiator dodges, tries to flip the net again, but it snags his foot. The crowd gasps. The Murmillo sees it and doesn't hesitate. One clean swing of the gladius and the trident goes flying. The Gladiator stumbles back, netless, weaponless, but not quite down. He raises his arms. Not to fight, to beg. The crowd erupts in noise, some cheering, some booing. Everyone has an opinion. Mercy? Death? Was he brave enough? Did he earn another chance? It's not up to them, it's up to the emperor. He leans forward in his seat. Raises a hand, and gives a thumbs down. But here's the thing, historians still argue what that gesture actually meant. Some say thumbs down was mercy, sword down, life spared. Others say it meant death, sword to the throat. And some believe it wasn't the thumb at all, but a closed fist, a flat palm. A turned wrist. But here in the Colosseum, today, the meaning is clear. The Murmillo steps forward, one stroke, the Gladiator falls, the crowd erupts. Cheers. Applause. A few shrieks. Someone throws a laurel wreath into the arena, landing awkwardly on the corpse, and just like that, the bodies begin to accumulate. But there's no time to dwell. Workers appear immediately, dressed in dark tunics, faces covered, dragging the body off with practiced efficiency. A crew follows with fresh sand. Another rakes the surface smooth again, erasing blood like it was never there. The arena is reset, and the gates creak open. Again, you sit back, dizzy. There's a weird lump in your throat. Maybe dust. Maybe not, and this is only match one. The dust hasn't settled from the last fight before the gates grind open again. This time, two gladiators appear, not the classic Murmillo and Gladiators, but a pair of Thraex and Samnite. Different armor, different fighting style. You might be tempted to think it's just costume change, but it's more than that. Each gladiator type had its own niche, strengths, and even a personality the crowd came to expect. Like actors in a recurring drama, but with more risk, the Thraex comes out with a curved sword and a small shield, wearing a helmet with a griffin-shaped crest. The Samnite is bulkier, carrying a large rectangular shield and a gladius. Both are trained killers. Both know the stakes. They salute the emperor with a nod and move toward each other with a careful balance of respect and menace. You feel the tension in the air thickening, like humidity before a thunderstorm. The fight starts slow, each man gauging the other, looking for a weakness, for that split-second advantage. The Thraex darts forward, slashing low, aiming for the legs. The Samnite blocks, pushes, and tries to pin his opponent against the wall. You notice the crowd leaning in, some shouting advice, some holding their breath. This is more than sport, it's entertainment, politics, even survival. Here's a fringe tidbit. Some gladiators had fan clubs, complete with graffiti and slogans spray-painted near their homes. One gladiator named Priscus supposedly had more fans than a popular charioteer. Think of it as ancient Rome's version of Instagram followers, except the likes involved spears and shields. Back to the fight. Suddenly, the Thraex slips, and the Sand Knight moves in for the kill. But just as the gladius arcs down, the Emperor raises his hand. Silence. The Sand Knight freezes. The Thraex breathes a shaky sigh of relief. This gesture, the pause, is the Emperor's power manifest. He's the ultimate arbiter, the god in the amphitheater. No one moves without his say-so. The Emperor signals mercy. The crowd is stunned. Some boo. Others cheer. The tension relaxes, and the Thraex is allowed to live, bloodied but alive. This moment is a reminder that, despite the brutality, the games were political theater as much as anything. The Emperor could display mercy, cruelty, or indifference, and each choice sent a message, both to the crowd and the empire at large. Historians still debate how often mercy was granted or if it was mostly symbolic, a way to build suspense rather than actual clemency. But in the stands today, you can feel its weight. The Sand Knight helps his opponent to his feet, and they exit the arena together, nodding in a silent pact of respect. The crowd claps, some shouting Vivat. Long live the fighters. As the fighters exit, a small group of attendants enter with baskets of fresh fruit and water, offering a brief moment of reprieve before the next battle. You reach down to rub your aching knees and realize you've been sitting still for hours. The sun has moved significantly across the sky, and the shadows are beginning to lengthen. The next match is announced, and you prepare yourself. Because if you thought the previous fights were intense, you haven't seen anything yet. The gates open again. This time, the arena is flooded with light, movement, and the unmistakable scent of sweat and sand, and you know, without a doubt, that the games are far from over. You catch your breath, but barely. The arena, now soaked with a mix of sweat, sand, and the occasional splash of wine from enthusiastic spectators, shifts mood again. This time, the match is a venatio, a beast hunt. Not the gladiator kind, but something else entirely. You notice handlers dragging in cages covered with heavy cloths, the clink of iron locks, and the murmur of anxious animals. The venatio is one of the most popular spectacles, a demonstration of man's dominance over nature. At least, that's the official line. But really, it's a chaotic zoo meets battle royale, today's main attraction, a pride of lions. Well, one lion and a few large cats, at least. You squint, trying to count through the dust. The handlers look tense, gripping their spears tightly. The lion steps out first, majestic and terrifying, its golden mane shimmering in the sunlight. It prowls the arena like a tiny king surveying its kingdom. The crowd is silent for a heartbeat, just watching. Then, as the hunters enter, noise explodes. The venators, hunters skilled in tracking and killing beasts, stride into the arena armed with spears, nets, and a healthy dose of bravado. They're not gladiators, but their lives are equally on the line. The lion snarls and charges at the nearest hunter. The man dodges, lobs a spear, and misses. The lion pivots, eyes locked on its target, muscles rippling. It's not a fair fight. The animal is wild, fast, and utterly unpredictable. The hunters use tactics, grouping, circling, driving the lion toward traps. But the beast's raw power is undeniable. You notice something strange. One of the hunters suddenly hesitates, maybe a flicker of respect or fear. Maybe he's tired, or maybe he's questioning why he's here at all. It's a fleeting moment, but it lingers. As the fight intensifies, dust flies. Spears fly. The lion roars, shaking the air like thunder. The crowd is on its feet, cheering, gasping, some shielding their eyes. Finally, the beast is cornered, exhausted, and the lead hunter steps forward for the kill. A spear thrust, a roar, and then silence. The lion collapses, and the crowd bursts into applause and relieved laughter, but something about the moment feels different. A quiet respect, maybe, for a creature that fought to the bitter end. The hunters drag the body off, and the arena crew quickly shovels fresh sand, hiding the blood once again. You lean back, rubbing your forehead. The sun has warmed your neck and back, and the day feels long already. Someone nearby jokes, "At least the hippo didn't show up today." You chuckle, remembering the stubborn beast from earlier. Ancient Rome had a strange sense of humor, sometimes unintentional. The next act is about to start. You notice the stands beginning to fill up again, vendors restocking, and children settling down. The games are relentless. You're beginning to realize it's not just a few battles. It's a marathon, and you're here for all of it. The crowd's mood shifts again. You don't hear the usual horns or fanfare this time. Instead, there's a sudden hush, like the entire Colosseum is holding its breath. Two large wooden doors at opposite ends of the arena creak open slowly. From one side, a group of gladiators emerges, their armor gleaming despite the sun's harsh glare. From the other, a set of prisoners, men and women, shackled, looking pale and terrified. This is the damnatio ad bestias, condemned to beasts. A public execution, wrapped in spectacle and sorrow. The prisoners are brought into the center of the arena, hands tied, faces pale. The crowd's cheering fades into whispers and gasps. You feel a knot in your stomach. This part of the games wasn't just about entertainment. It was a brutal reminder of Rome's power, its laws, and its mercy, or lack thereof. The executioners bring in wild animals, wolves, bears, and leopards, some tamed to a degree, others barely restrained. The animals snarl, claws scraping the arena floor. You notice a man in the crowd, his face grim, quietly mouthing a prayer. You wonder if he's a family member or just a fellow human feeling sympathy in a sea of spectators. One prisoner, a young woman, stands tall despite her chains. She looks toward the emperor's box, as if daring him to spare her. The crowd is silent, the animals are released, chaos erupts, wolves leap. Bears charge. Leopards spring. The prisoners scatter, some running, others frozen by fear. The scene is horrifying and mesmerizing. You watch as the animals pursue, the screams echoing in your ears. The crowd roars with a mix of excitement and revulsion, but here's the strange part: some prisoners fought back. Using whatever they could grab, stones, pieces of wood, even their chains, they resisted. A few even managed to wound or kill an animal. This wasn't common, but it happened. Historians still argue how often these uprisings occurred and what they meant to the crowd. Was it tragedy? Heroism? Or just more blood sport? The executions last less than an hour. Bodies and beasts alike are dragged away, and the arena is cleaned once more. You swallow hard, feeling the weight of what you've just witnessed. The sun is lower now, casting long shadows across the stone. Nearby, a vendor offers you a fig, but you're too stunned to take it. The games continue, but something has shifted. You realize that watching this is not just about survival or curiosity. It's about understanding the raw, messy heart of Rome, and somehow, despite the horror, you're still here, because you want to see what comes next. The arena quiets for a moment, a brief, almost reverent pause before the next spectacle. You feel the air change again, heavier now with expectation. Something new is coming, and the crowd's energy is different. No longer just bloodlust or fear, but something akin to suspense. Two men step into the center of the arena. They're not heavily armored gladiators or animal hunters. Instead, they carry scrolls and wear togas, unlikely figures for such a brutal stage. These are the haruspices, or so you hear whispered, a sort of ancient fortune teller or diviner. Their job is to read the entrails of sacrificed animals and interpret the will of the gods. It sounds like a sideshow, but in Rome, religion and spectacle go hand in hand. One of the haruspices raises a chicken, a sacred bird for the Romans, and releases it into the arena. The bird flutters nervously, pecking at the sand. The crowd watches silently as the men consult their scrolls and murmur incantations. Then, the other haruspec steps forward with a small offering, a freshly killed goat. He opens its belly, revealing a tangle of organs. The men peer closely, tracing patterns and muttering. You feel like you've stepped into some strange ritual, a blend of theater, superstition, and power. This moment might seem out of place, but it's essential. The games weren't just entertainment, they were a way to honor the gods, ensure divine favor, and legitimize the emperor's authority. The haruspices declare the gods pleased. The crowd exhales, some clapping softly, others whispering prayers. But here's the twist: some historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine religious acts or just clever propaganda to keep the masses in line. Were the gods really watching? Or was it just a show? You lean forward, fascinated despite yourself. Even in this brutal place, there's a strange beauty in the ceremony. Then, the gates creak open once more. This time, a group of gladiators steps in, but they're different. They're women. The crowd erupts, some shouting in surprise, others cheering. Female gladiators, or gladiatrices, were rare but not unheard of. They fought fiercely, challenging the usual gender norms of Roman society. You watch as two women face off, their weapons gleaming and muscles tense. Their fight is swift, fierce, and full of skill. They move with a grace that belies the danger. One woman disarms the other, but instead of delivering a finishing blow, she offers a hand to help her up. The crowd goes wild. It's a reminder that even here, in the harshest place, moments of humanity shine through. As the sun begins to dip, casting golden light across the arena, you realize the games have shifted again, from brutal spectacle to complex theater, from death to a celebration of life's strange contradictions, and you, seated among thousands, are part of it all. The next chapter is waiting. The fading sunlight stretches shadows long across the Colosseum, but the energy doesn't wane. In fact, the dusk seems to sharpen everything: the sounds, the scents, the tension. The next event arrives like a gust of wind. You hear the rumble first, a loud, grating noise, like metal scraping stone. Then, the unmistakable sound of wheels. A chariot race? Nope. Not here. This is the Naumachia, a staged naval battle. You blink. Water? In the Colosseum? Really? Yes. This might be the most ridiculous and extravagant spectacle Rome ever pulled off. At certain times, the arena was flooded to mimic a miniature sea battle. They built wooden ships, complete with oarsmen and sailors, and let them duke it out right in the middle of the city. Today's mock battle is based on a famous historical conflict, but the details are murky. Historians still argue how often these Naumachia happened and whether the engineering feats were sustainable or just one-off extravagances. You watch as two tiny fleets sail into view, their sails billowing and soldiers ready with miniature ballistae and catapults. The water sloshes around their oars as the ships ram, twist, and fire. The crowd goes wild, cheering as wooden figures fall into the water. Though, here's a fun fact: sometimes those fallen were stuntmen or slaves who knew how to swim. The rest? Well, history isn't clear on how many ended up genuinely drowning. The smell of brine mixes with the usual dust and sweat, creating a strange cocktail. You laugh to yourself. Only Rome would turn an amphitheater into a temporary lake and stage a battle just for kicks. Amid the chaos, a small fire breaks out on one of the ships, a spark from a flaming arrow or perhaps careless spectators tossing torches. Panic flickers for a moment, but the crew quickly douses it with buckets of water. Crisis averted, you find yourself caught up in the drama, almost forgetting you're watching a bloody mock war. As the sun sinks behind the city, the last ship sinks in a dramatic splash. The victors are hailed, and the crowd roars its approval. The water drains swiftly, and workers rush to dry the arena, preparing for the next act. You stretch your legs and rub your eyes. The day has been long, strange, and exhausting, but there's more to come, because the Colosseum doesn't sleep. The water has drained, leaving only damp sand and the faint smell of salt, but the show goes on. You barely have time to settle before the announcer's voice booms, signaling a shift to something quieter, yet somehow more unsettling. It's time for the munera, the ceremonial sacrifices. Now, this isn't just your garden variety offering. It's a ritual drenched in symbolism and superstition. A procession of priests enters, carrying ornate altars, garlands, and incense. The scent of burning frankincense curls through the air, mingling with the ever-present aroma of sweat and dust. You watch as a pair of black bulls are led into the arena, their coats glossy and eyes wide. The crowd is hushed. Many crossing themselves or muttering prayers. The bulls are adorned with ribbons and flowers, a stark contrast to the blood to come. The priests begin their chants, a strange, melodic drone that echoes off the stone walls. Suddenly, one bull is sacrificed, its blood flowing into a basin. The ritual is swift but solemn. This is a moment where the brutal and the sacred intertwine. Sacrifices like this were meant to appease the gods, ensure the safety of the emperor, and guarantee the continued prosperity of Rome. Yet, some scholars still debate whether these rites were sincere religious acts or just another form of political theater, a way to remind the populace who held power. You glance around and catch the eye of a young woman in the crowd. She looks both fascinated and disturbed. The second bull remains, its fate uncertain. Then, a surprising twist. The emperor rises from his box and signals mercy. The bull is spared, gasps ripple through the audience, followed by applause. Mercy, like in the gladiator fights, is a powerful message. The ceremony ends with priests sprinkling holy water over the arena, blessing the gathered crowd. You take a deep breath, the mix of sense and sound sinking deep into your memory. The games are not just about blood and death, they're a complex dance of power, religion, and spectacle. As the priests exit, you realize how tightly woven these elements are into the fabric of Roman life. You stretch, feeling the weight of hours sitting in the sun, yet, despite everything, the blood, the noise, the exhaustion, you feel strangely captivated, because, here in the Colosseum, every moment tells a story, and yours is far from over. The priest's procession fades away, but the energy in the Colosseum shifts once more, like a breeze changing direction. You hear the distinct clang of metal, this time, not from weapons, but from armor being fastened and weapons being sharpened. The next combatants enter, the spectators, paired against retiarii. You remember these from earlier in the day, the classic gladiator matchups everyone talks about. But seeing them up close, it's a different story. The spectator is heavily armored, with a smooth, rounded helmet designed to protect against the retiarius's trident. His large rectangular shield and short sword make him a moving fortress. The retiarius, by contrast, is lightly armored, wearing only an arm guard and a shoulder guard. His main weapons are a trident and a net, relying on speed and cunning. The fight begins with the retiarius trying to keep distance, flicking his net toward the spectator, hoping to entangle him. The spectator advances, shield raised, eyes locked behind his helmet's narrow visor. The battle is a study in contrasts, brute strength versus agility, offense versus defense. You notice the sweat glistening on the retiarius's bare skin, the sand kicked up by their feet, the distant cheers and jeers of the crowd. The retiarius manages to snare the spectator's arm with the net, pulling him off balance. The spectator grunts and slashes wildly but can't shake the net immediately. This is your chance to see the tension of these fights, not just a brawl, but a deadly chess match. Eventually, the spectator breaks free, and the duel escalates to brutal close combat. The retiarius is quick but exposed, and you can't help but worry for him. At one point, the retiarius trips, and the spectator moves in for the kill, but just before the fatal blow, the emperor again raises his hand. Mercy. The retiarius lives to fight another day. You feel a strange mix of relief and exhaustion wash over you. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some gladiators kept detailed records of their fights, sort of like ancient fight stats. Fans could debate who had the best kill count or who was the most merciful. Historians still argue whether the mercy shown was a genuine choice or a predictable part of the game's drama. As the two gladiators salute each other and exit, you realize the crowd's roars have softened into applause. The sun is almost gone now. You lean back, the day's weight settling into your bones. And yet, you know the night's not over. The Colosseum lives on. The sun dips below the horizon, and a cooler breeze sweeps through the Colosseum, offering a brief respite from the day's heat. For hours, the air had seemed heavy, thick with dust, sweat, and the lingering scent of blood from the earlier contests. Now, as the shadows lengthen, the breeze feels like a gift from the gods themselves, brushing lightly across your face and raising goosebumps along your arms. It is not cold, not yet, but the sudden change makes you more aware of how stifling the afternoon truly was, but the arena isn't quieting down. If anything, the atmosphere thickens, like the moment before a thunderstorm, the tension humming invisibly between the seats. Voices rise and fall in anticipation. Entire sections of the crowd chanting, clapping, or stamping their feet against the stone, sending vibrations through the structure itself. It feels as though the Colosseum has taken on a pulse of its own, alive with the restless energy of thousands waiting for something new. The next event is something you haven't seen yet, a mock sea battle reenacted on foot. No water this time, no elaborate flooding of the arena floor, but the Romans are nothing if not inventive. Dozens of actors and trained fighters stride out, dressed in elaborate costumes meant to imitate the garb of sailors and warriors. Some wear painted helmets shaped like fish or dolphins, while others carry shields decorated with waves and sea creatures. Their props, wooden spears, swords dulled at the edge, great banners painted to resemble sails, transform the sandy floor into a stage of the imagination. They simulate a famous naval encounter, complete with shouting, clashing swords, and even smoke effects from hidden fire pits carefully arranged around the arena. The sudden plumes of smoke curl upward into the twilight sky, their acrid scent mingling with the evening air and creating an almost eerie effect, as if the sea itself were rising out of the ground. The crowd gasps, then cheers as the ships collide, their crews tumbling against one another in a choreographed chaos of sparks and steel. You can almost hear the crash of waves in your mind, though it is only sand kicked up by their boots. Sailors fall in dramatic heaps, rolling across the ground with exaggerated cries, while heroes emerge victorious, holding aloft their weapons to receive thunderous applause. The line between theater and battle blurs. At moments, it feels like a real struggle for survival, yet the carefully rehearsed movements remind you that this is not raw violence but a spectacle woven for effect. It's a theatrical performance disguised as battle, a reminder that the games weren't just about real violence but also storytelling and propaganda. The Romans, masters of pageantry, knew that symbols could be as powerful as swords. By reliving victories on land and sea, the people were reminded of the empire's might, its reach extending far beyond what any one person in the audience would ever see. You notice that the emperor's box is more animated now, the emperor himself leaning forward with interest. His posture is less formal, his eyes fixed on the performers as though he too is caught in the spell of the spectacle. Around him, courtiers whisper and nod, their expressions carefully measured, always ready to laugh at his amusement or applaud at his delight. This performance is designed to celebrate Rome's military victories and inspire loyalty. And the sight of the emperor enjoying it only amplifies its purpose. Here's a fun, fringe fact: some performances included live music and poetry recitations to enhance the drama, making the experience almost like a full-day festival. Imagine the clash of cymbals, the deep drone of horns, the strumming of lyres timed with the fighters' movements, each note stirring emotion as the play unfolded. To some, these layers of sound and verse elevated the games beyond mere blood sport, creating something closer to a living epic, told before thousands of witnesses. Historians still debate how much these theatrical elements influenced the crowd's perception of Rome's power and legitimacy. Did the people believe what they saw as history, or did they understand it as art? Or perhaps it hardly mattered, because the effect was the same. Whether truth or performance, the games reminded every person present of the empire's dominance, its divine favor, and the glory of belonging to such a realm. As the mock battle ends, the crowd erupts in applause, some shouting for encores. The noise is deafening. A tidal wave of approval rolling around the oval shape of the amphitheater. The performers bow, some dramatically clutching their chests as though mortally wounded, before rising to salute the emperor. Others raise their weapons toward the sky, basking in the roar of the crowd as they file out. The arena crew quickly prepares for the next act. You marvel at their efficiency, props whisked away, sand smooth, smoke dispersed with surprising speed. These workers move like shadows, rarely noticed, yet without them the grand illusions would crumble. Their silent labor is what allows the magic to continue seamlessly from one spectacle to another. You stretch your legs and glance up at the sky. The stars are starting to peek through the fading twilight, faint pinpricks against the deepening blue. The first few are barely visible, but the promise of night hangs above, vast and eternal, in contrast to the noise and excitement below. A coolness lingers in the air, and for the first time in hours, you breathe deeply without tasting the grit of dust and heat. You realize that despite the hours of watching blood, beasts, and battles, the games also offered moments of artistry and spectacle. These performances, with their color, music, and craft, softened the edges of brutality, wrapping violence in the guise of culture. And somehow, that makes it all more bearable. You feel the strange pull of contradiction, the horror of death balanced against the awe of performance, cruelty interwoven with beauty. The night is still young. Night fully settles, blanketing the Colosseum in a cool, shadowy calm, well, as calm as a stadium full of 50,000 spectators can get. The oppressive brightness of the day has finally faded, leaving the world washed in dark blues and deep shadows. The buzz of so many voices no longer feels like a roar but rather a constant hum, a sea of sound rolling in waves around the arena. You can feel the energy of the crowd even more sharply now, each cheer or gasp echoing longer in the cooler night air, each sound carrying as though amplified by the stone walls. The torches along the perimeter flicker, casting dancing orange glows across the stone seats and sandy floor. Flames sway and sputter when the breeze sneaks through the arches. Shadows stretching and shrinking in rhythm with the light. The Colosseum, already massive, now feels almost alive, its stone ribs glowing with fire, its belly full of restless noise. The shifting glow makes the armor of the guards and attendants glint in a way that feels both theatrical and ominous. The air carries a mix of smoke, sweat, and the faint, almost sweet scent of roasted chestnuts from the vendors. It's a strange contrast, the aroma of something so ordinary and comforting set against the backdrop of blood and combat. People nibble, share, and barter, as though the stadium were not a place of life or death spectacle but a grand fair. The mingling smells cling to your clothes and hair. Embedding the memory of this night deep into your senses, you notice your fellow spectators settling into a different kind of energy, less frenzied, more expectant, as if bracing for the grand finale. Earlier events had been loud, unrestrained, almost chaotic, but now a kind of collective focus begins to take hold. Conversations taper off, bodies lean forward, eyes fix on the sandy floor. The hush is not silence, but anticipation, the sort of stillness that vibrates with tension. Suddenly, the announcer's voice cuts through the murmur. It's time for the Munis, the main gladiatorial event of the day. The words roll like thunder across the arena, amplified by the natural acoustics of the stone. The audience erupts, the sound sharper and more unified than before. This is what everyone has been waiting for, the ultimate test of skill, bravery, and survival. The doors at the far end of the arena creak open, their heavy wooden frames groaning as chains and pulleys strain. From the darkness beyond, two figures emerge, stepping into the torchlight with deliberate slowness. A pair of gladiators stride out, their armor shining under the flames, faces set with steely determination. Their presence alone draws a deafening roar, each section of the audience shouting to support one or the other. One is a heavily armored Murmillo, with a large rectangular shield and a gladius at the ready. His helmet's broad crest gleams like a cresting wave of bronze, the narrow slit of his visor hiding whatever expression lies beneath. He walks with the weight and confidence of a soldier trained to endure. The other, a Thraex, is leaner, more agile, his smaller shield allowing freer movement. In his hand gleams a curved sword called a Sicca, designed not for broad strikes but for quick, cunning thrusts into weak spots. His helmet sports a tall plume, swaying with every step, a visual marker meant to excite and distinguish him in the blur of motion. The two circle each other, sizing up their opponent amid the low roar of the crowd. Every small shift in stance is met with murmurs from the stands. A foot planted, a shield raised, a blade angled, it all becomes part of the theater of tension. You can almost hear the audience collectively holding its breath, waiting for the first clash. The fight is intense and deliberate, a careful dance of attack and defense, feints and counters. Sand sprays up under their boots as they lunge and retreat, the scrape of metal ringing out against the night. Shields slam, swords glance off bronze and iron, sparks jumping in tiny flashes. It is not the chaotic frenzy of animals but the trained, deliberate exchange of men who know the art of survival. You see every bead of sweat, every quick breath, every subtle shift in posture. The torchlight glistens on damp skin, catching on droplets that fall like stars into the sand. Muscles strain, armor rattles, and the rhythm of combat becomes almost hypnotic. It's brutal and beautiful, violence and grace entwined in a choreography that transcends the blood it threatens to spill. At one point, the Thraex lunges, narrowly missing the Murmillo's shield and managing a shallow cut on his arm. The crowd gasps in unison, the sound sharp and electric. A thin line of blood glistens, stark and vivid under the firelight. The wound is not fatal, but it is a reminder of how quickly fortune can shift in this sand-stained theater. The Murmillo responds with a powerful strike, forcing the Thraex to backpedal. His shield pushes forward like a wall, his sword driving the smaller man across the arena. The crowd roars at the momentum shift, cheering as though they themselves are part of the struggle. You notice something strange. The gladiators seem almost aware of their audience. Playing to the crowd's mood, sometimes exaggerating pain or victory. A stagger is drawn out, a triumphant gesture held longer, a cry of effort louder than necessary. This theater of violence is part combat, part performance, designed not only to test their skill but to satisfy the appetite of the people. The fight ends when the Murmillo disarms the Thraex and holds his sword at the other's throat. The Thraex freezes, chest heaving, sweat pouring, the tip of death a breath away. The crowd waits in silence for the Emperor's verdict. The pause feels stretched, deliberate, a moment suspended between life and death. A moment stretches, then a thumbs up, mercy. The defeated gladiator drops his sword and rises, victorious for another day. Relief floods the crowd in a roar that is as loud as any cheer for blood. In this moment, mercy itself becomes a kind of spectacle, a gift as dramatic as violence. You realize that mercy, like violence, is carefully choreographed, part of the theater that keeps Rome's citizens enthralled and loyal. Historians still debate how much control gladiators had over their fates or whether everything was dictated by political theater. Was mercy real, or was it another illusion? Did the crowd truly decide, or was it always the emperor's will disguised as public choice? The answers remain uncertain, but the effect, binding the audience into the illusion of power, was undeniable. As the two fighters exit the arena, the crowd roars its approval. People rise to their feet, waving, clapping, shouting names. Some spectators look as though they have witnessed a miracle, others beam with the thrill of entertainment. The air feels lighter now, released from tension, though still humming with excitement. You exhale deeply, the tension leaving your body in waves. The pressure you hadn't even realized you carried in your shoulders eases at last. The games aren't over, but this feels like a peak moment, a reminder of the paradox that defines the Colosseum. Here, life and death, brutality and grace, fear and awe all intertwine. And you've been right in the middle of it. The echoes of the crowd's cheers ripple through the Colosseum, fading slowly into an almost reverent hush. The sound lingers like a phantom in the arches and passageways, a reminder of the roar that shook the very stones only moments ago. Now, in its place, comes a quieter rhythm, the shifting of thousands of bodies on stone benches, the whisper of conversations, the creak of wooden sandals, the faint jingle of coin purses as vendors make last-minute rounds. The Colosseum breathes with a softer pulse, as though it too understands that the end of the day is near, but there's no rest yet, not quite. The air feels heavy again, not with heat but with the weight of expectation. You can sense it in the crowd around you. In the way people lean forward despite their weariness, unwilling to miss the final act. Even the children, once fidgeting and restless, sit more quietly now, their wide eyes reflecting the glow of the torches. The arena is still alive, but the energy has shifted into something gentler, more contemplative. You notice the atmosphere shifting, becoming more somber and reflective. Earlier in the day, violence and victory dominated, each moment soaked in adrenaline and spectacle. Now the hush carries something different, an invitation to marvel rather than shout, to witness rather than demand. The audience knows what is coming, the final event, the closing note of the symphony that has been this day of games. The final event is approaching, the Venatio once more, but this time it's different. You steel yourself at the word, remembering the chaos of beasts and desperate men, the cries that tore the afternoon air. But tonight's Venatio is no slaughter. Instead, it's a display meant to soothe rather than inflame, to impress rather than terrify. No wild beasts charging, no desperate fights for survival. Instead, it's a parade of exotic animals, creatures from the farthest reaches of the empire, marching through the arena like a living tapestry of Rome's conquest. From the far corners of Africa to the deserts of Arabia, from forests and mountains you'll never see, they've been brought here to stand as symbols of Rome's power and reach, elephants draped in silk and gold, towering and slow, their immense feet pressing deep into the sand with each ponderous step. Their tusks gleam in the firelight, capped with decorative metal, while colored fabrics ripple along their massive flanks. Beside them, handlers carry long poles, guiding the beasts with careful touches. Their expressions taut with both concentration and awe, giraffes follow, their long necks swaying like the masts of ships, their curious eyes blinking as though baffled by the sea of faces staring down at them. Each step is oddly graceful, their slender legs bending with a rhythm that seems almost otherworldly. Even a camel or two trudges across the sand, grunting with every step, their shaggy coats catching the firelight in strange, shifting tones. The crowd chuckles at their ungainly movements, the sound light and playful after the intensity of combat. You can't help but marvel at the sheer spectacle of it all. These animals, impossible to see together anywhere but here, now share the same ground that soaked in blood only hours earlier. The transformation is startling. The same arena that had been a battlefield now feels like a pageant ground, a place of wonder rather than terror. The crowd murmurs, amazed by the sights and sounds. Voices rise in astonishment as children point, as elders nod, as men and women trade whispers about which province each animal might have come from. For many, this is the closest they will ever come to touching the edges of the empire, to glimpsing the lands their legions conquered. For a brief moment, every spectator is both entertained and reminded of Rome's might. This display is a reminder of Rome's vast reach, the lands it has conquered and the riches it has claimed. Each animal is not merely a curiosity but a living testament to conquest, paraded before the people so that they may feel part of the empire's glory. To see an elephant in Rome is to feel the presence of Africa. To see a camel is to taste the desert. Rome itself expands with every step the animals take across the sand. You see handlers guiding each animal with ropes and soft commands. Their faces a mix of pride and exhaustion. Some walk barefoot, their tunics streaked with dust and sweat, their eyes darting nervously toward the animal's great bulk. Others smile faintly, basking in the awe of the crowd, knowing they too are part of the spectacle. Here's an odd tidbit: some animals were trained to perform tricks, like kneeling or carrying flags, adding a touch of whimsy to the procession. Imagine an elephant lowering its massive head on command, or a camel bearing a brightly painted banner aloft. These gestures blur the line between natural majesty and staged performance, turning beasts of the wild into actors in Rome's endless play of power. The audience laughs and claps when a giraffe bends awkwardly or an elephant lifts its trunk. As if even nature itself can be bent into Rome's service, historians still argue whether these parades were genuine celebrations of empire or just lavish shows to distract the masses from political unrest. Were they proof of Rome's greatness, or carefully designed illusions meant to keep the people dazzled, too enchanted to notice the struggles outside the arena? The debate lingers, but in this moment, none of that matters to the crowd. For them, the animals are wonders, and the empire feels limitless. As the procession ends, the animals are led out, and the arena is quickly cleaned once more. Workers scatter sand over footprints, sweep away droppings, and smooth the ground until it looks untouched. Their efficiency is astonishing, their work quiet and uncelebrated, yet vital to maintaining the illusion of perfection. You lean back, muscles aching but mind buzzing. The wooden bench has left its mark on your body, stiff and sore, but your thoughts whirl too quickly for fatigue to settle fully. The day has been a whirlwind, gladiators and animals, death and mercy, ritual and rebellion. You feel as though you've lived a dozen lives in the span of a single day, and through it all, you've been a witness. A spectator caught in the timeless dance of the Colosseum. Not a participant, not a victim, not a ruler, just a pair of eyes among thousands, absorbing everything, storing it away as memory. The night deepens, and the last torches flicker low. Their flames sputter and lean, the oil nearly spent, shadows growing longer across the sand. The murmur of the crowd begins to shift once more, this time toward departure, toward rest. A chill creeps into the air, settling over the stone. You realize the games will start anew soon enough. Tomorrow, another crowd will gather, another day of blood and spectacle will play out under the sun. The cycle will continue, as it always has, feeding Rome's hunger for entertainment and power. But for now, there's peace. The crowd thins slowly as night fully settles over Rome, leaving a quiet calm that feels almost unreal after the day's wild chaos. The rush of voices that had once filled every crevice of the amphitheater dwindles into fragments, snatches of conversation, tired laughter, the shuffle of sandals on stone steps. One by one, people slip away into the night, torches carried down corridors until only faint pinpricks of light remain. The thunderous mass of humanity becomes a trickle, then a silence. You linger in your seat, the stone beneath you cool and solid, grounding you in this ancient place. After hours of noise and heat, the chill of evening seeps through your clothing and into your bones. A reminder that the Colosseum is as much a vessel of nature as it is of spectacle. The hardness of the bench presses into you, oddly comforting now, anchoring you as the enormity of what you've witnessed begins to settle. The air smells of dust, sweat, and a faint trace of burnt wood from the torches now guttering out. The scents mix into something distinct, almost ritualistic, as though the arena itself exhales after the long day. Ash drifts lazily in the faint breeze, catching the last glow of firelight before vanishing into the darkness. Each breath you draw feels like a blend of exhaustion and memory, the remnants of a place that refuses to fade easily, as you sit in the fading light. The echoes of the day's events swirl around you, gladiators locked in deadly ballet, roaring beasts pounding across the sand, prayers whispered under breath, the subtle tension between mercy and brutality. You hear them not as sharp sounds anymore but as impressions, like shadows painted on your mind. They rise and fall in rhythm with your breathing, slowly softening as the distance between now and then grows. It's strange to think about the thousands who have sat where you are, watching these spectacles unfold over centuries. Senators in polished robes, soldiers on leave, merchants boasting of their travels, families with children wide-eyed at the sight of elephants and lions. Each came with their own reasons, some for glory, some for blood, others for the simple thrill of being part of something larger than themselves. The seats around you are empty now, but their presence lingers, layered one upon another through time, like countless voices whispering from the stone. You catch a last glimpse of the emperor's box, now empty and silent, a symbol of power that once ruled this arena. Earlier, it had been the focal point of every eye, its occupant holding the fate of men with the turn of a hand. Now it stands vacant, but its weight endures, a shadow of authority that outlasts the games. Even in silence, it speaks of Rome's might, its grandeur, and its fragility. The Colosseum is more than stone and sand, it's a living story etched with triumph, tragedy, and everything in between. Every crack in the wall, every grain of sand is steeped in memory, in the countless days of spectacle that unfolded here. The arena has outlasted emperors, soldiers, and citizens alike, a testament not only to Rome's engineering but to its hunger for meaning through performance, and you've been part of that story tonight. Not as a gladiator, not as a beast, not as an emperor, but as a witness, one of many, yet uniquely yourself. For a few hours, you were woven into a narrative older than memory, and that thread now belongs to you. As you stand and stretch, the cool night air fills your lungs, washing away the dust and heat. Your muscles ache, not only from sitting so long but from carrying the tension of the games. The stretch feels liberating, each breath pushing you further from the weight of the day. The torches along the walls sputter their last, throwing shadows that stretch long and thin, like tired limbs seeking rest. You realize that, despite the horror and the spectacle, there's a strange comfort here, a connection to a distant past that still echoes in the present. The Colosseum may be filled with brutality, but it also binds people together in shared experience, in awe, in fear, in wonder. The paradox itself, both terrible and beautiful, creates a sense of belonging that transcends centuries. You take one last look around before slipping away, the Colosseum's ancient stones whispering their timeless secrets. The arches loom above you, majestic and solemn, and for a moment you imagine the arena sighing, relieved to rest until the next dawn. You carry that whisper with you as you leave, a soft murmur of stone and sand that clings like an echo in your heart. Now, it's time to rest, to let the day's memories settle like dust in the corners of your mind. You feel them drifting slowly downward, layering over each other, forming a quiet foundation that will remain long after the details blur. The story of Rome's grand arena fades gently, like the flicker of a dying torch. The flames shrink, glow red for an instant longer, and then disappear, leaving only warmth in the dark. So too do the images of the day recede, slipping into the shadows of your memory, and as you close your eyes, you carry with you a glimpse of a world both brutal and beautiful. A world where spectacle defined life, where power and fragility walked hand in hand. A world that, in some ways, is still with us. Now, as you settle deeper into your pillow, the vivid images of the Colosseum begin to soften and blur, no longer sharp and raw but gentle and distant. The stands melt away into soft gray shapes, the arena's roar fades into the hush of a calm night, and the flicker of torchlight becomes the glow behind your eyelids. Feel the cool stones beneath you, the warm sun fading, the murmurs of the crowd dimming into a soothing hum. Let the sensations drift from sharp detail to soft impressions, like sand slipping through your fingers, the roaring beasts quiet to soft breaths, the clang of swords turns into whispers of wind. Even the emperor's hand, once decisive and powerful, becomes no more than a faint gesture in the dark. Everything sharp dissolves, leaving only calm. Remember, you are safe here, in your own quiet space, far from the dust and blood. The stories belong to the past, and the past cannot touch you. Here, there is only comfort, only stillness. Breathe in slowly, the cool night air filling your lungs, and breathe out, releasing any tension still lingering. With every exhale, the weight of the day lifts, drifting away like smoke into the night. Let the stories drift away like leaves on a gentle stream, carrying you toward rest. They float lightly, carried without effort, moving farther until they are only ripples in the distance. The past is there, waiting quietly, but now, it's time for you to let go and find your peace. Close your eyes, feel the calm wrapping around you like a soft blanket. Sleep will come soon, gentle and deep, and when you wake, the ancient world will be just a memory, but one you carry warmly with you. Sweet dreams.